On today's Locked On Senators, for the first time this season, the Sens are on a 4-game win streak after a 6-3 victory over the Columbus Blue Jackets.
And they did so with only 5 defensemen, including missing their top pair. Could either Jake Sanderson or Artem Zub be returning soon?
We'll discuss that. Plus, speaking of 5 and defensemen, Morgan Rielly has been suspended for his act on Ridley Greg. That's all coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 981 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Today's episode is brought to you by gametime. Download the gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first ticket purchase. A reminder that you can follow the show on social media. We're at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where we say hello, and a reminder that a subscription, comment, and like go a long way to helping the show grow. And be with us after every single Ottawa Senators game, the POSTCAST, where we vent or vibe. It has been a ton of vibing with 4 straight wins. Today is Wednesday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day to all those who celebrate. I'll tell you one thing, Pilsy, I love when special teams comes through in a Sens victory.
Yeah, the special teams really hold a special place in our heart, especially since it was the first time this season that the Ottawa Senators scored a power play goal and a shorthanded goal. And just for good measure, they threw a couple even strength goals in the mix there too.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Shout out to the captain, Brady Tkachuk, his second career hat trick, his first time where all 3 goals beat a goalie. Now, asterisk, the first goal, the goalie was in another province. He might have been probably Kempville, realistically. Maybe Carp, Almont. He was way out there in the valley. But Brady Tkachuk backdoor, great passing play. Claude Giroux finds Josh Norris right over to Brady Tkachuk. Then for his second act, he does it all himself. Gets the defensive zone takeaway all the way down, and then gets his own rebound to beat the goaltender, Daniil Tarasov. But my favorite was his third goal, Pilsy, because they took advantage of Ivan Provorov blocking a shot, hobbled. Not even hobbled. He was down.
Down and out, yeah.
But you don't get the whistle until your team gets possession when you're in the defensive zone, unless it's a head injury or if a goalie's helmet comes off. Those are really the only ways that a play gets blown dead without your team having possession when you're in the D zone. And to add insult to injury, not only does Brady do that classic move, and I thought he was going to try to go between the legs. We've seen him try that when he's in tight, but where he pulls, moves his body, gets it in, and then basically gives him the old Tyronn Lue, Kobe Bryant, the step over, just to put a little exclamation mark on. I know he wasn't trying to show him up, as that's been a topic of discussion in the last few days in Sensland, but I thought that was a nice little exclamation point from the captain.
Oh, yeah, and especially to get the hat trick, his 150th career NHL goal. It was a great job by Brady Tkachuk.
Allen Iverson, who stepped over Tyronn Lue. I knew it didn't sound right.
Okay, I also knew that, but I'm not a big hoop head, so I wasn't about to correct you.
Hoop head. That would mean there's nothing inside your brain because a hoop is empty. Nothing but net.
Yeah, if anything's going pure swish in this noggin of mine.
So if there's one thing I know for sure, last night confirmed the Senators are not a bottom team in the league. They are just way better than the Columbus Blue Jackets all over the ice. And I know they have some injuries. But my goodness, Ottawa was missing its top pair and played with 5 defensemen.
Yeah, it saddens me, Ross, to scroll down the standings and see the Ottawa Senators in the same area as the Columbus Blue Jackets, because talent-wise and roster-wise, these two teams should not even be close.
But for the first time, the Senators have more wins than regulation losses under head coach Jacques Martin. They are now 11, 10, and 2. And further to that, when the Sens would win in the past, sometimes you're feeling like, did they deserve to win? Did they do enough good things consistently throughout the game? Or were they bailed out by certain situations? Over the course of these last 4 games, and heck, they're 7-1-2 in their last 10 games with losses to Stanley Cup contenders in Boston and the New York Rangers. I should say regulation losses in there. And then the regular loss was to Colorado, wasn't it? No, the regulation loss was to the Rangers in the last 10. The overtime losses, Winnipeg and Boston, still Stanley Cup contenders, all 3 of them. So to me, the fact they've gotten points in 9 of their last 10, it's consistency. It makes us feel as fans, and I think I'm speaking for all the citizens out there, that they're showing signs of not just life now, but a sustainable way of living.
Yeah, and we certainly hope so, Ross, and especially the games that they've been playing at home, they've been dominating. You love to see that, and they've got an easier schedule this week with the Anaheim Ducks coming up. We'll do a full game day preview of that on tomorrow's episode, and then I say easy, but my dreams are haunted by that game in Chicago that I went to last year. So they're in Chicago. Connor Bedard most likely will not be back, as it sounds like the Blackhawks are saying he'll return next week. So that's even an added bonus to the Ottawa Senators that they should be able to win. So if all goes well and according to plan, the Ottawa Senators could be on a 6-game winning streak heading into their Florida back-to-back games up against Tampa and the Florida Panthers next week on Monday and Tuesday, which would be awesome to see.
It certainly would. I'm not ready to count my chickens before they hatch with this squad, but I do like your optimism. And frankly, these are teams that you have to beat if you want to even get back into the conversation. Look, it wasn't only last year in Chicago. 2 years ago when they played in Chicago, they lost 5-1. So their last 2 games at the United Center, they've lost by a 10-1 score. So they got to right the ship on that. And next segment, we'll discuss if we can expect Jake Sanderson to be back for that game. Would certainly go a long way to helping them get some more layers to their back end. Because last night, a lot of heavy lifting from Thomas Chabot in particular. Erik Brannstrom had a season high in ice time. So a lot of good signs on the back end for sure. Still want to see Chychrun take another step forward, show a little bit more consistency there. But overall, a solid performance in a workmanlike game that you just simply have to win. Look, it's been over a year since the Senators had multiple power play goals and a shorthanded goal in a game where they don't allow a power play goal, because that's important. You have to win the special teams battle overall. So that game was also against Columbus. It was a 4-0 shutout win, and the shorthanded goal in that game, though, was an empty netter. So this even more impressive to me, and it all stemmed from allowing the first goal and not getting on their heels, just saying, no, we're going to play the same way. They came down. They had that glorious opportunity where Tarasenko hit the post. Then they draw a power play, and then they go and convert on it. That, to me, was a very, I don't know if impressive is the right word, but they did what they were supposed to do, and they did it without any sort of, we weren't sitting at the edge of our seat in the third period. Sure, it became a 1-goal game in the second. We didn't love that necessarily, but once Ridley Greg got that tip-in goal near the end of the second period, I think everybody kind of had a sigh of relief, I think you could say.
Yeah, it was satisfying, Ross. I think maybe that's a word you could use, because so many times we're disappointed when the Sens get down and they're just not able to claw their way back and things kind of slip away from them. But this time, even though that fluke goal happens, it didn't seem to slump the team at all. You didn't see any hanging heads. You didn't see any slowing down. They kept the pedal to the metal. They got great momentum on the power play. They're able to score. And you could just tell, especially when I love it when Brady Tkachuk is the first guy to score for the Sens, because it just seems like the rest of the team rallies behind him and he gets into it more and he's like, let's go, boys. I'm dragging you guys with me. And he ultimately gets 2 more goals after that. I thought Claude Giroux had a great night as well with that beautiful shorthanded goal, bar down in the top corner on Tarasov. And then he gets 2 power play assists as well. So Claude Giroux, Brady Tkachuk, when those guys are leading by example, the rest of the team seems to follow along and they end up having good games.
And they had gone 3 straight games without a power play goal. They went 0-for-3 in 3 consecutive games. So good to see them back in the mix. The PK, by the way, 5 straight games without allowing a goal. The penalty kill has killed off 11 straight, dating back to the Boston game where they only had 3 seconds of penalty kill time in that game, and they allowed a goal, that David Pastrnak rip from the point. But hey, it's a good time to be a Sens fan. I could get used to these wins. I've heard some other fan bases be like, hey, you guys must have great content because, fans always love teams that are struggling. There's always more to talk about. No, I want wins. I want all the wins in the world. And hopefully the Senators can continue to inch their way back into the mix when it comes to the pack. And, well, maybe another P word we'll start to discuss at the end of the month. No, I'm not doing it until they have to give at least 3 out of 4 wins in their 4 hardest games this month. If they beat 3 of Tampa, Florida, Vegas, and Dallas, then we can have a conversation about what the steps would take.
For me, the emphasis has to be on the Eastern Conference teams, right?
Right, but I just mean you have to beat the best to be among the decent.
Definitely. I mean, anyone can beat the Leafs. Anyone can beat the Columbus Blue Jackets. So that doesn't really say too much. Yeah,
the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, true. Exactly. Like when you beat up on those teams, it's ho-hum, take care of business, move on. But to go up against teams like the Panthers, the Lightning, the Dallas Stars, and especially, my God, this franchise has had no success up against the Golden Knights. So that
on ice or off ice. They took our first round pick. They took Mark Stone. What else do you want? They took Mark Mathon. What else do you want from us?
Leave us alone.
Even just enough out of that franchise. We need to go and I'll discuss this after the break. We're gonna debunk the Sens Vegas rivalry on the other side. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Look, when you're going out a night on the town for some entertainment, the one thing you should be focused on is having fun, not being stressed out. So don't worry when you're buying tickets to your next event. Just go to Game Time. It's the fast and easy way to buy tickets for not just sports, music, comedy, theater, all those you can find on Game Time with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets. One thing that Ross loves about Game Time is you get to see the view from your seat. So logo facing the wrong way, can't have that. You got a big pole in front of you, can't have that. You can't see the far corner. No, you don't want any of that. You want the best seat and you want to know you're getting it. And you can do that with Game Time. And time is money, so you can buy your tickets with just 2 taps. Boom, tickets on your phone. You'll love to see that. And maybe you're like Ross and I, you're not great planners. You want tickets right up to the day of the event. You could do that an hour after it starts even. You can find last-minute tickets, and there's exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for all your sports and entertainment needs. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
Today's episode is also brought to you by the Glebe Central Pub. I had people in the postcast last night saying, wow, great ad read. There's no read. I'm speaking from the heart when I speak about the Glebe Central Pub, right in the heart of the Glebe at 779 Bank Street. Make sure you head there for great food, awesome drinks, the atmosphere to match. It's always a good vibe at the Glebe Central Pub. Not only at the pub itself, where there's live music every Saturday in February, they've got the dartboard, they've got the TVs, everything you need to have a great time at your local neighborhood pub. They also have the $17 Send shuttle to and from the CTC. That's a round trip for just $17. Leave the keys at home and bring the good times with you to the GCP. An hour and 15 minutes before the game, Sue will take you to the CTC, and right where she drops you off, that's where she'll pick you back up. So it's that easy. You just go, have fun, and come back to the Glebe Central Pub, where the fun continues after the game. So head to the website, glebecentralpub.com, to get your tickets. Also, make sure you're following them on social media to know what's going down at the Glebe Central Pub. The vibes are free at the GCP. right, Pillsy. Look, lots to get to. The Jake Sanderson discussion. Artem Zub, the top pair needs to be back for Ottawa to continue this hot streak they're on right now. If, more likely, when we find out officially that Jake Sanderson won't play tomorrow, although he's speaking to the media as we're discussing it right now, the Senators are most likely going to make an emergency recall tomorrow morning. That said, the Belleville Sens are taking on Syracuse tonight at home. So if there's a defenseman who's not in the lineup, but you're not even your tinfoil hat on, just put your Sens hat on and know that that player is most likely on their way to join the team in Ottawa. Before we get to that, though, Pilsy, here's what we're going to do about those gosh darned Vegas Golden Knights.
All right.
They've just had the Sens number. We're going to bring some stickers. We're also going to bring maybe we can discuss this. Maybe a stone. Maybe that's what we need because they took Mark Stone from us. Maybe we bring a stone and we draw a Sens logo on it or whatnot. Okay. And when we're at the draft in Vegas, we are going to hide it at T-Mobile Arena. It's like the Looney for luck at the 2002 Olympics. That story, Salt Lake City, Canadian ice maker, put a Looney under the center ice circle, and that got them their first gold medal in 50 years in men's hockey. Pilsy, remind me in June because that's why we're game time guys, because we're last minute tickets, the lowest price is guaranteed. We're also last minute planners. So remind me of that. We are going to make a little content out of that. We're going to put a stone somewhere that will not be found at T-Mobile Arena.
Yeah, if there's any sculptors out there that can sculpt us a Ottawa Senators stone, let us know, and we'll get in touch and we'll figure that out. I do like that though, Ross. Just a little Sens memorabilia tucked away to try to give this team some sort of help up against the Vegas Golden Knights. But we'll get more into that when we preview that game.
Totally, and we're gonna the game. Is the draft. Oh, you mean the Vegas game at the end of the month? That's in Ottawa at least, because they've never won in Vegas. At least they got one win in Ottawa.
True. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Don't even get me started on the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll be here all day. Look, speaking of stone, though, I thought this top pair of Jake Sanderson and Artem Zub was going to be in stone for years to come, but it's almost like one left out, and it's like, the other couple they have to be together. So now both out of the lineup. Look, the good news is it seems like both are short-term injuries. It was an optional skate today, and we just have confirmation with the asterisks. TSN 1200 tweeted this out. Jake Sanderson said he's feeling better, and while he won't play tomorrow against Anaheim, he thinks he could return soon, maybe even Saturday in Chicago. So that's good news there. Still awaiting an update on Artem Zub.
Yeah, I think it's probably more likely that Zub will end up playing in Chicago. This is just my gut, I guess, so I shouldn't say more likely, but I don't think either of them are going to play up against the Ducks tomorrow. Honestly, Ross, part of me would just be like, Jake, enjoy the extra time off, rest, go to Fort Lauderdale early, hang out, get some sunshine, and we'll meet you in Florida, because I don't want to rush putting him back, because if this team is going to make a long-term successful route out of the bottom of the basement, they're going to need Jake Sanderson, and I'm not too concerned whether he plays that game in Chicago or not, personally.
Oh, really? Because for me, it's get him in as soon as possible, man. They need him. And look, Travis Hamonic was even kind of sheltered a little bit more in last night's game, and it's hard to shelter a player when you only have 5 defensemen. So
yeah, definitely. Well, no, don't get it twisted. Obviously, this team is better with Jake Sanderson in the lineup, but if it comes down to rushing him and getting him in early for that Chicago game, or giving him a little more time and then inserting him in the lineup with more rest, more recovery up against 2 more crucial games, back-to-back games, nonetheless, on the road up against Eastern Conference powerhouses, I think that's the more efficient route to go. But who knows how
we don't even know what the injury is.
Exactly.
We just know that it's a lower body injury. But look, the Senators, they need them both back. And Zub, again, just lower body. That's all we've been told on that front. So I'm curious to see what will happen in that situation. The good news, though, is a guy like Erik Brannstrom stepped up big time. He was one of your Sens Central standouts in last night's game. So I want to give some stick taps to him. When you look at it, Pilsy, like obviously with 5D, everything's going to be a bit of a mumble jumble. But at 5-on-5, the Senators had 5 5 different pairs that played 5 minutes or more together at even strength. Like, this was as much of like, hey, who's got gas? Who's ready to go? Who's filled up enough to get out there? And we know Hammer's famous for, oh, I'm gassed. But look, I found it interesting though that, like, obviously Chabot led the team in ice time, led the game in ice time. He was paired with Travis Hamonic for almost 7 minutes. That was the most of any pair last night at even strength. And then Chabot and Bernard Docker were second at 6 minutes and 29 seconds.
What?
So, yeah. And Chabot and Brannstrom were at 5 minutes and 11. So Chabot played over 5 minutes with 3 different partners last night. Like, that to me is super impressive. And it almost should have been mentioned last night on the postcast, how it's like, dude, for him to be out there, he like, they always talk about, you want to build chemistry with whoever you're out there with. Shabby had no idea who the next guy out was, but for him, like, that to me is leadership personified. And look, again, we might have to stop saying this because now it's been like a love fest with Thomas Chabot, and great guy, awesome dude. And we want him to have a ton of success, but we were really hard on him earlier this year. It just wasn't going his way. Last handful of games, dude, he's been playing some of his best hockey that I've ever seen from him. Offensively, defensively, he's in the right positions. And I just hope this stays up because he's playing like an $8 million player right now.
And these are the games he's been needed to elevate the most, right? Without Jake Sanderson. So I think that's
he's
huge.
He's +8 in his last 3 games.
Yeah. Wow. And that's the thing. Like, he's such a smooth skater out there. It's incredible that as he gets more ice time, it's almost like he gets better with more ice time and more adversity. Like you mentioned, all those different D partners. So I'd like for Chabot to find a way to kind of keep that chip on his shoulder, right? Maybe not get too comfortable just playing with Chychrun on a second pair basis when Zub and Sandy get back. So there's got to be a way where he can keep that mentality and keep his game at that elevated level, because he's a big part of this team. And when he's playing good, the team typically has success. When he's not feeling it, you notice it.
Since returning from a month-long injury, Thomas Chabot's played 20 games, has 13 points, +8 with an average ice time of 24 minutes and 11 seconds. So that's the kind of pace that you want to see from him moving forward. Moving forward in the show, speaking of left shot defensemen making a lot of money, Morgan Rielly's going to be making a little less after earning a 5-game suspension. It's just come across that he's appealing it. What does that mean? We'll get into that. And Ridley Greg spoke on the matter. If you missed that on the postcast, we'll get you some of the highlights of that next. This is Locked On Senators, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. I'm sure myself, like many other Ottawa Senators fans, had a great night on FanDuel last night. And it's not just money line. There's so many ways that you can get in on the action. And if you are a hoop head, I'm not a hoop head, but maybe you are, you want to bet on the NBA as well. It's getting intense over out on the court as they are pushing for playoffs, just like in hockey. And you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, North America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. You can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams. You got quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. And on hockey, Ross and I have been looking at futures. Can Connor McDavid end up with the most points this season? And it was what, plus 260, Ross?
Yeah, get on it while you can.
There you go.
6 assists last night.
6 assists in one night. He could climb that leaderboard huge, especially with Edmonton making a push for the playoffs. So you don't want to miss out on that. You can bet on that and so much more at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Shoot your shot, just like Ridley Greg. You just want to bury it. You don't want to have any doubt. So shoot your shot on FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
Right, Pilsy. As we discussed, the Senators 4 straight wins. They'll have a chance to put that on test tomorrow when they host the Anaheim Ducks, a game that you can take the Glebe Central Pub shuttle to and from GlebeCentralPub.com to get your tickets for that. Just $17 round trip. Awesome to see. Tons of great stats coming out of last night's game. You mentioned in your FanDuel ad read as well, the same game parlay, Shane Pinto anytime point, and a Senators win. That is a combination made in heaven. The Sens last night improved to 33-5-5 when Shane Pinto records at least a point. A secondary assist, but he was also dominant in the faceoff circle again. He just makes this team so much better. I almost said it 8 times, once for every game he played this year, but I thought I would bore everyone with that. But man, what a stud. And having him on that line with Ridley Greg and Vladimir Tarasenko has made this thing tick. Speaking of Ridley Greg, he's been in the news the last couple of games. It was an hour and 15 minutes into the postcast, Pillsy. So for those who maybe didn't catch it, your thoughts on Ridley Greg's first media appearance after last night's game, where he said, look, heat of the moment, heat of the battle. It was an important game for us. And, well, I got a breakaway, and I just thought I would bury it.
Yeah, I love that from Ridley Greg. I mean, he's just such a calm, cool, collected guy off the ice. But on the ice, he's an absolute menace. He's a pest out there, and he pisses off some of the best players, some of the best veteran players on a nightly basis, no matter who he's up against. And I thought, he was very calculated with what he said. He doesn't give long answers. And when asked about the suspension, he just kept it simple and politically correct. That's up for the league to decide. That's it. That's fine. And yeah, just the classic line from him. Hey, I was on a breakaway. I just thought I'd bury it. Nothing wrong with that. If you get that opportunity, you put that thing away. So I loved it. And you could tell, like, the entire Sens scrum was so excited to finally get some quotes on him. Ian Mendez had some great questions. Go check out his article on The Athletic where he talks about that. And I thought Ridley Greg nailed it. So you'll love to see that. And just then the commentary from the rest of the boys, like Thomas Chabot, being like, no, that's probably all you're going to get from Ridley. We'll text him and be like, what's up? And he won't say anything. And that's the end of the conversation. So that's fine. That's just the type of dude he is.
He's a dude, man. He's a dude. He's a dog out there. And he goaded Morgan Rielly into a penalty. Look, the Leafs had a great game last night. Bobby McMahon, the hero everyone knew would happen in Toronto. He gets a hat trick. They beat the St. Louis Blues, not without only Morgan Rielly, but without John Tavares and with Mitch Marner out of the lineup as well. So they get their first win. It's a 5-game ban. Now, Morgan Rielly has appealed the suspension, and because the suspension is less than 6 games, it goes just to Gary Bettman, not to an independent arbitrator. Sorry, because it's less than 7 games, 6 or less. That's why David Peralins went to Gary Bettman as well, and Bettman said, no, it's staying as is. I would bet that it would stay as is with Morgan Rielly as well. It seemed like the hockey world all was kind of in agreement where it's like, look, love the play. He's a disturber. It's what he's going to do. And for Morgan Rielly, of course, there's going to be a reaction, but you just simply, in a league that's trying to get rid of headshots, you cannot use your stick as a weapon to cross-check someone in the face. I think these takes have been kind of over and over again. We've got plenty of videos on that, but I think just from a standpoint of now that the ban has been in place, the suspension was levied after yesterday's episode. Fair?
I thought it was going to be 6 games. I thought they were going to look at the David Perron situation and basically match that. It was similar type of like aggression up against kind of a defenseless player that was not a hockey play. So I thought it'd be 6, but 5 games, I'm fine with that as well. I'm not sure how Morgan Rielly and his team are going to try to spin that appeal to change it. It's you cross-check the guy in the face like that. There's no ifs, ands about it, unless you're a delusional Maple Leafs fans that needs to get their eyes checked and can't figure out why that was a 5-game suspension. So I think it was appropriate.
Yeah, I think so too. I guessed yesterday. I asked everyone to guess theirs, and I said 5. So that's kind of what I was expecting. Once you had the in-person, you had the opportunity to do more than 5, but I knew the Leafs would push back, and there are lots of other cross checks that didn't quite get that. But as they said in their video, which go watch the video on that because they showed the slap shot 8 different times into the net. It was pretty funny. They had every single angle on it. Wasn't a hockey play, and I think their biggest thing was the opponent wasn't engaged in a confrontation. Like people were bringing up the Matthews on Rasmus Dahlin. They were battling out front of the net. You could see how escalation would happen, whereas this was a predatory retaliation after the play was over.
And then I think Leafs fans were trying to look at, it was a little while ago, but Chiasson, Sens legend, he had a cross check that I believe happened at the end of a game. But again, like those players were kind of back and forth, and that cross check was not as violent and aggressive as Morgan Rielly. So I think whether it's 5 or 6 games, if it's either or, that's fine. So yeah, I would say they got it right here.
Pilsy, tomorrow's a game day against the Ducks. Any final thoughts on today's show?
Well, I'll focus on tonight's game day, but not for the Ottawa Senators, for the Belleville Senators up against the Syracuse Crunch. Like you mentioned, if there's an emergency call-up happening for the Sens, we might be able to clue together who that's going to be based on who's on the ice for warm-ups for Belleville. But this is a big game for Belleville because Syracuse is the top team in the North Division, and we all know how crucial those division battles are. And the Senators, their past 10 games, they've been slipping out of it here, 3-6-1. So it'd be nice if they're able to kind of get back on the right ship here up against the top team in the division.
Now, it's a home game for the Belleville Sens, so they're not going to be in Syracuse like they were a couple weekends ago where Angus Crookshank found one guy in the crowd who'd been giving it to them in the penalty box, and after he scored the OT winner, he made sure that they knew that he was there. So, hoping for another good performance against Syracuse because they actually swept that weekend, and these divisional games are just so important in the American Hockey League where every point is critical, and that's the first place team in their division as well. So go out there, support them if you're in the Bay of Quinte. And hey, we just tweeted out our discount link for next Monday, Belly's birthday. Pilsy's going to be in attendance. So will the Martian. So grab your tickets to that game. It's going to be a blast. They're wearing those jerseys that Martian designed. So that's pretty cool in itself. And I'm excited to get my hands on one of them as well. So always a good time. It's a great barn when it's full. So let's make sure it is on that game. And I'm just excited for tomorrow as well, man. Hopefully the Sens get a treat with Artem Zub in the mix. I'm not sure it'll happen, but if not, then Erik Brannstrom's going to have to play the way he did last night as well. And we're going to need a little bit more maybe out of Jacob Chychrun. Also tonight is the PWHL Ottawa, their first time playing in Minnesota. So that'll be interesting for them tonight. They've been off for the last little while with the international break. By the way, Emily Clark, friend of the show, unreal in that game 6, game 7 situation. Canada gets the win over US in that rivalry series. Ottawa sits last in the PWHL, but they've also played 2 less games than 4 of the other 5 teams. So lots of runway left. It's kind of interesting. They also are tied for the least amount of regulation losses, but they can't get it done in overtime. They have 4 overtime losses, Pilsy, in 7 games. They are the New York Islanders of the PWHL.
Damn. I mean, they're right there. And Sens fans know games in hand, they're precious. So they're going to be able to make up some ground, I'm sure.
Final thoughts from me as well. Just Bruce Garriock reported at intermission, so take with what you will, that if Chris Tanev does not become a reality, if not sooner than later, which would be a different story, the Senators may be interested, and it's a name that we'd heard from the Senators in a couple of years. And again, different management, but Matt Dumba has been connected to the Ottawa Senators for a few years. Now, he's on a 1-year contract. There's no indication that he's going to be moved. Arizona could very well just keep him, making a bit over $3 million, right shot defenseman. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm very meh about this, maybe even a negative meh about this. I think in conversation, it sounds good. You know, you hear Matt Dumba, you think about all those successful seasons he had with the Minnesota Wild. I'm looking at his elite prospect page right now. Lots of great seasons, but
dude, I'm shocked he's 29 years old. I thought he was like 34.
It seems like he's been playing forever, but it's really fallen off a cliff for him last year. And this year, only 6 points in 47 games on a Arizona Coyotes team where you would think he would be able to kind of elevate his game and get a lot of good opportunities there, but it doesn't seem that way. So unless it's a cheap price, I'm not that, even if it is a cheap price, I'm not that interested because it would come with an extension most likely. And I don't think that's the right play here.
Well, what if
the Sens wouldn't get him as a rental.
Why not? Here's my trade offer. Hamonic and Kubalik and Kastelik for Matt Dumba. Final thoughts.
You still need to clear more money.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
Throw Hamonic in there. It'll be like the FNUF trade. We'll just give you all of our like bad contracts and bad players, and you can just give us a player that many fans will be like, oh, do we really want him? And you're like, yeah, he's better than the alternative.
I just like, if you get Dumba, where does he play? Like, how does he elevate
with
this
Branny?
core?
He just plays with Branny. He replaces Travis Hamonic on the depth chart, in my opinion. Right shot defenseman.
Yeah. I don't know.
And then you don't sign him in the offseason, and then you bring in a Chris Tanev type as well. Look,
No.
I'm not banging the table, and
I'm
if
out.
it's any sort of asset, then no thanks. But yeah, I don't love it. We'll see. Maybe it's going to be a name out of left field. Again, Steve Staios has not acquired a player yet since taking over the GM reins with the Ottawa Senators. So that's something we're really going to look forward to, as we are 3 weeks and 2 days away from the NHL trade deadline. So we're going to be following that throughout. We'll be back tomorrow for a game day preview. We will also have the postcast tomorrow night, so stay tuned for that. For today, we say goodbye. Thanks so much for listening. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan, and this has been another edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.